Now let's get into it. This live feed is going to be about book excerpts from this book that I've been reading for a while. Blood Brothers: The Fatal Friendship Between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. So resuming chapter 10, Trouble in Miami. Where do you think I would be next week if I didn't know how to shout and holler and make the public sit up and take notice? I would be poor for one thing, and I would probably be down in Louisville, Kentucky, my hometown, washing windows or running an elevator and saying yes sir and no sir. You want my place. Cassius Clay. Sports writer Robert Lipsyte, sent to Miami to record the all but certain destruction of Cassius Clay, wrote Sonny Liston's comment into his notebook in red ink. He's a fag. I'm a man. Liston was not the first member of the boxing fraternity to question Clay's manhood because since 1960, when he began training in Miami, there were rumors that persisted that he was gay, mostly because he defied simple stereotypes of boxers. From his first professional contest until the Liston match, he showed only a passing interest in women. To be sure, he talked about foxes, spent hours observing them, and engaged in good-natured, non-threatening flirting, but that was about as far as he went. At this stage in his career, Cassius was old school, believing that any sort of sex would drain strength and weaken fighters. Masturbation is the curse of mankind, the ring editor Nat Fleischer wrote in his influential book Training for Boxers. By extension, sex while training was tantamount to career suicide, determined to win the title and all the fame and the money that went with it. Clay accepted the common beliefs, for the most part, pushed women to the far corners of his life. His androgynous behavior added to the rumors, like Emil Griffith, who designed women's hats and spoke in a wispy, breathless voice. Clay's actions defied the conventional masculinity. He seemed obsessed with how he looked inside the ring. His polished white shoes, white satin trunks, Vaseline-coated body, and sleek defensive style seemed dictated more by his sense of aesthetics than any athletic imperative. No boxer in a sport that almost guaranteed facial cuts and a flattened nose talked more confusively about his appearance. Choosing feminine adjectives he had repeatedly asked before and after every match, ain't I pretty? Or ain't I beautiful? Seldom, if ever, did he refer to himself as handsome. Liston might have sensed that, like Benny the Kid Paret did with Griffith. He could belittle Clay's masculinity by calling him a fag or a blank. But although Griffin was sensitive about his sexual identity, Clay was not. Paret's taunts were on target, causing Emil to respond violently, but Liston's vulgar labels never reached Cassius' heterosexual core. Clay's psychological warfare against Liston was dramatically more effective, where he began his campaign. Hello, thanks for tuning in. About 5 people in the live chat, in the live feed right now. Excuse me, the live feed watching. Clay's psychological warfare against Liston was dramatically more effective. He began his campaign in earnest on November 5th, 1963, at about 3 a.m. outside Liston's home in Denver. Fleeing police harassment in Philadelphia and looking for a new start in a quiet life, Sonny had moved to Denver and bought a home in an upscale neighborhood filled with well-established bankers, lawyers, physicians, and businessmen. Sports Illustrated's Huston, I think it's Houston, I think it's Huston Horn, claimed that the week after Liston moved in, 32 for sale signs sprouted in neighborhood lawns, but Sonny wanted peace, not war, with the other homeowners. Liston may have desired a quiet suburban existence, but Clay had other ideas. While Sonny slumbered peacefully, Cassius aboard a red and white 30-passenger 1953 flexible. Oh, hello, Peanut. Thanks for tuning in. Flexible bus was headed to the champion's direction. There was nothing incognito about his approach. The slogans: Cassius Clay Enterprises, world's most colorful fighter, and Sonny Liston will go in eight, decorated the side of the bus, which bounced and rumbled with a circus coming to town festivity. Cassius Rudy, Boudini Brown, photographer and friend Harold Bingham, and a few other merry pranksters joked as they planned their assault on Liston's domicile. To guarantee an audience for his performance, Clay had already alerted local reporters that something was about to happen at Sonny's place. Outside the house, Clay hit the horn. Oink, 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 oink. Lights blinked on in the surrounding houses. You know how them white people felt about the black man that's moved in there anyway, which sure wasn't helping it none. Cassius later remembered. So people was hollering things, and we got out with the headlights blazing. Bigum had a mild stuttering problem, so of course Cassius insisted that he knock out the door and talk to Liston. At the time he reached the door, Sonny wearing short, nylon pajamas cracked it open. "What do you want, you black blank?" He greeted Bigum, and if his point was not made quite strongly enough, he fixed him with his infamous stare, as if the intruder was a bug about to be pinned in his insect collection. So that's what was going on. I won't get all into this. But this is how things got started. Obviously, Lister and Clay hadn't negotiated a date and a home for the fight they was going to fight in. So according to this chapter, they had signed to a fight, but the contest needed a home and a date. So that wasn't etched in stone yet. So while it seemed that the world of boxing was divided between promoters who did not want any part of listing his underworld ties and promoters who worried that Clay would be fare no better than Patterson did against the powerful champion, they feared involvement in a congressional inquiry, a shameful mismatch, a financial fiasco. Liston understood what constituted an attractive contest. A boxing match is like a cowboy movie. There's got to be good guys. There's got to be bad guys. That's what the people pay for, to see the bad guy get beat. He understood his role. I'm the bad guy. Yet between Sonny's nefarious past and questionable present, Cash's incessant pattern and black Muslim connection, there was no cowboy to wear the white hat. The December issue of Esquire attempted to put the white hat on Liston. Actually, photographer Carl Fisher shot him in a red, white with right trim Santa Claus hat. This covered close-up of Sonny's face, expressionless mouth, flattened fighter's nose, and eyes that projected all the pain of his unhappy life, was suggested that there would be no Christmas in 1963. An appropriate metaphor for a nation still mourning the death of President John Kennedy. In Miami, however, there was another Santa, William B. McDonald. Needs only a snowy beard to pass for Santa Claus, wrote Miami Herald reporter Edwin Pope. Shortly after Esquire appeared on the newsstands, Uncle Willie, as businessman and sportsman, McDonald referred to himself, bought the dubious rights to stage the Liston Clay fight in Miami Beach Convention Hall. Perhaps it took a gambler and promoter like McDonald to agree to pay the enormous sum of $625,000 for the live gear of a match that had sent so many other established boxing promoters fleeing for the doors. Why take the chance? He had the answer for kicks, a minute for kicks. But beyond the sheer fun of action, he sought to promote the image of America abroad. During the 1950s and 60s, the Soviet Union openly ridiculed what it considered the hypocrisy of America's claims of freedom and equal opportunity. McDonald thought it would be great to show the world that two colored boys like Liston and Clay could fight in a southern city, be treated like kings. Although paternalism streaked through McDonald's discussion of race, he praised Liston and Clay, emphasizing their gentlemanly qualities, but his liberalism stopped short of tolerance for the Nation of Islam. A McDonald associate said, "Don't invite Uncle Willie and Malcolm X to the same party." The idea of Malcolm running to Uncle Willie at a cocktail party at Bell Harbor or the Fontainebleau Hotel seemed unlikely, but he would have found a warmer welcome there in New York, where his troubles with Elijah Muhammad weighed heavily on his mind. Malcolm needed to get away. His phone rang nonstop with press calls dogging him with questions about his future. The man who had always had an answer for reporters was now unsure what to tell them. Tortured by his separation from the nation, his mind randomly jumped among Elijah, Captain Joseph, President Kennedy, his miles to the press, and the death threats. It was all too much. On January 15th, on a Wednesday, the morning after his late-night writing session with Alex Haley, he reached for the phone to call a friend, but before he could dial the number, it rang. Joseph K. Bonder, an FBI agent from the Buffalo Field office, was on the line with a few questions. "Where were you last night? Do you know anything about a plot by the Black Muslims to assassinate Lyndon Johnson? How long will your suspension from the nation last?" Ponder seemed especially interested in Michael's future with the set. But after the call from Ponder, the phone rang again. A reporter from the New York Times also wanted to know if there was any truth about the plot to kill the new president. "The whole idea is ridiculous," Malcolm declared. For an hour, reporters from all over the country dialed his number, inquiring about the assassination rumors and his suspension. Finally, the phone stopped ringing, and after being badgered for an hour, Malcolm turned to a personal matter and called a friend in Miami to tell him that he was bringing Betty and their children to visit. "That's the best news I've heard all day," Cassius Clay said. "Me and my brother Archie will pick you up." So moving forward, it says right here that Malcolm X told the brothers in Miami that he and Betty were celebrating their first vacation in more than 6 years. But he wasn't on vacation. Malcolm Saxon soon realized had another agenda in mind. Malcolm and his family checked into the Hampton House Hotel on Northwest 27th Avenue, a popular retreat for black tourists and locals. Some of the most famous figures in America had booked one of the balcony rooms. Considered more glamorous than the black hotels in Overtown, the Hampton House was a resort, featuring valet parking, a courtyard swimming pool, a restaurant, a jazz club famous for its mixed-race sessions lasting until sunrise. When he was not training, Clay visited the Hampton House and played with Malcolm's daughters, teasing them like a big brother. Watching Cassius entertain them made Malcolm smile and for a moment forget all about his troubles. Cassius brought out Malcolm's warm and playful side. The minister laughed as he snapped pictures of the boxers climbing for his camera. But the pictures Malcolm took were not for a family photo album. In a private notebook, he began constructing photo back captions in a narrative he entitled The Other Side of Malcolm, the Family Man. The notebook accompanied photos of Cassius and Malcolm and his daughters, which were published in two black newspapers like the Chicago Defender and the New York Amsterdam News, suggested that he had begun to fashion a less threatening image of himself. So one of a loving father and a husband and older brother to Cassius, someone more acceptable in the mainstream civil rights movement. So it was also no coincidence that the pictures were published in the two cities where his enemies in the nation could not miss them. But in the early evenings, Malcolm walked with Cassius on the streets of Brownsville while FBI agents trailed closely behind. And all the time that they had spent together, his storefront mosques and crowded temples and private meetings and family gatherings, Malcolm had learned that Cassius was an impressible, inquisitive youngster who absorbed everything he taught. Cassius, he recognized, was perfect for his plan. He was a one-man publicity machine capable of attracting Malcolm's desired audience, young, idealistic, angry black men. Cassius, Malcolm told a reporter, has as much untapped mental energy as he has physical power. He possesses incredible potential to be something much more than a boxer. Studying Cassius with a crowd of journalists and a mob of black admirers, Malcolm could imagine him as a political force, someone who could be a diplomat, traveling the world with him, galvanizing the human rights movement at home and abroad. Whether Malcolm returned to the nation or not, Cassius was ideally suited to follow him. He to use his platform as a boxer to mobilize poor, disenfranchised black Americans. Cassius, Malcolm knows how to handle people, to get them functioning. He gains strength for being around people. He could draw people in, shape their perceptions, and make them believe what Malcolm wanted them to believe. Nothing seemed to rattle Clay. He has tremendous self-confidence, Malcolm observed. I've never heard him mention fear. Perhaps he did not realize the depth of Malcolm's problem. His public relationship with Malcolm irritated the nation's officials in Chicago, especially Elijah Muhammad. So the Supreme Minister had directed all followers to avoid the censor minister, but Cassius had disobeyed him. But in Miami, Malcolm became convinced that his future with the nation depended on Clay winning the heavyweight championship. While most doubted his chance of beating Liston, Malcolm boasted Clay's inner strength, telling him that he was too smart, too fast, too big to lose the fight. And Allah, he preached and had ordained that Clay would win. Believing Clay so much that he called Alex Haley in New York and told him that if Haley bet on his friend the underdog, he would win big. The fight was more than just another athletic contest. It was part of his larger plan. Because Clay would not just win, he would deliver a message inspired by Malcolm. Malcolm's message sounded to Clay like a voice from a burning bush. At a moment when the world seemed to doubt him, the man Cassius greatly admired never lost faith. Malcolm filled him with confidence, and if he said that Allah had ordained a victory, then it must be true. Malcolm and Cassius believed only spoke the truth, but he told him a lie, the same lie that he told reporters himself, that he would be reinstated within 90 days. Malcolm was living in the past. At some level, he must have realized that he would never return to the nation, but he still held out hope that he would reconcile with Elijah. He desperately wanted to believe it, and he convinced Cassius throughout January and early February. He wrote the messenger pleading for reinstatement, but he received only signs from Chicago. It was like Malcolm's enemies intercepted his letters before they ever reached Elijah. Signs troubled him and making him even more desperate to do something to restore his place in the nation. The only thing that Angelo Dundee knew about Malcolm X was what he had read in the papers. He mostly read the sports pages. He knew that Malcolm had said something incendiary about President Kennedy, but he did not realize that the main reporters described as the violently anti-white New York chief of the Muslims will be in Miami celebrating Cash's 22nd birthday. Seeing him in the flesh made the trainer nervous. Malcolm wore a broad, casual smile that never touched his eyes, a mask that seemed more threatening than friendly, but nothing startled Angelo more than when he saw Cassius involved in a deep conversation with Malcolm X. So Sam Saxon was similarly surprised to see Malcolm hanging around the gym. He knew that the suspended minister was not there to trade small talk. Earlier, Malcolm had asked him, if I go over to the gym, would I hurt Brother Cassius? Like, yeah, but man, everybody knows you, Captain Sam replied. He suggested that Malcolm go nowhere near Fifth Street. Malcolm said nothing, but a few hours later he showed up at the gym. Saxon noticed that whenever reporters came around to see Cassius, Malcolm talked to them. And anytime a photographer snapped photos of the contender, Malcolm maneuvered in front of the camera. Malcolm knew exactly what he was doing. If Elijah never accepted him back into the nation, then he had to consider an exit strategy that would force Cassius to walk in his shoes. Talking to reporters while photographers took his picture where Cassius violated the terms of his suspension. More importantly, he understood that all Muslims, including Cassius, were prohibited from speaking with him. If anyone in Chicago learned that Clay had disobeyed the messenger, perhaps Elijah would have no choice but to punish the boxer too. But then Cassius would clearly understand Elijah's vindictive nature, and Malcolm would not have to convince him of it. It seemed like a good plan, but Elijah didn't fall for the trap. But Angelo suspected that Malcolm was up to something, but was not sure of what. He seldom pried into Cassius' private life, but when outsiders stepped into his gym, sanctuary, and disrupted training, he voiced his displeasure. There was no time for distraction, he told Clay. They were about a month away from the biggest fight of his career. He refused to let anyone, especially some guy named X, cause Clay the title. Dundee had already started to lose pace with Cassius. Sometimes the boxer simply ignored his instructions. It seemed that he didn't listen to anybody except the Muslims. And now he was looking to Malcolm for training advice, financial counsel, emotional support. It was nearly impossible to carry on an actual conversation with him. Nobody ever talks with Cassius. Clay's fake Dr. Freddie Pacheco. So if you listen to him, this man known all over the world for his mouth can't even converse. You don't even get exchange of his ideas. Then doesn't even hear you. Pacheco was wrong on one point. Clay heard who he wanted to hear. So skip a little bit. When William C. Sullivan, the assistant director of the FBI, learned about Clay's presence at the Muslims' dinner, he concluded that the boxer had joined the Nation of Islam. A few weeks earlier, Sullivan had circulated a memo among leading FBI officials encouraging a counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, to discredit Malcolm Elijah Muhammad, Martin Luther King, and other prominent black figures. Special agents working in the borough's covert program had infiltrated organizations like the Nation of Islam, disrupted their activities through wiretap surveillance, forged documents, blackmail, and planted false media stories. Armed with information about Clay's affiliations, Sullivan tipped off the press and added his name to a list of NOI targets. The day after his speech, reports about Clay and the Muslims appeared in newspapers in New York. The Herald Tribune's Dick Schaap, who had known Cassius since his amateur boxing days, was not sure the fighter was a card-carrying Muslim, but he had no doubt that he sympathized with the nation. So if Clay shares the anti-white sentiments of the black Muslims, he wrote, he has always disguised his feelings well. Although he had interviewed Malcolm in the past, when Schaap investigated the minister's relationship with the boxer, he learned very little. Malcolm won't say anything publicly, and an acquaintance told Schaap. The one subject he won't talk about, even privately, is Cassius Clay. While Malcolm remained in New York, Cassius returned to Miami, where reporters pressed him for details about his trip. Yeah, his relationship with the nation had just deepened significantly. The truth was that he had discarded his slave name Clay and received his ex from Chicago. So in the nation, he was now officially Cassius X. Clearly, Malcolm was not the only Muslim betting on the heavyweight contender. His knives fooled few reporters. They had seen him with Malcolm, while writers could not understand why he would associate with a man who had spoken so clearly about the deceased president. Clay feigned ignorance. If Malcolm said that about my President Kennedy that he should be shot too, he said, I knew he said something about chickens coming home to roost. That's all I heard. Just gonna skip around a little bit. Keep moving. So I'm gonna read 3 chapters. By the third week in January, America's thoughts had started to tilt towards South Florida. Really cold winds ripped across the Midwest and Northeast, death and misery mounting, proclaimed the headline. The worst blizzard of the year, snow drifted 12 feet and more from the Mississippi to the Atlantic seaboard, stranding drivers, challenging walkers, generally making life uncomfortable. Miami beckoned. Just skip around a little bit. So this chapter talk about the Beatles. Obviously, they changed the landscape of pop music, being on the Ed Sullivan show on February 9th on a Sunday. 73 million television views watched. They sang 5 songs, including that one on Hold Your Hand. Then the next Sunday, they made their second appearance on the show. This one televised from the Deauville Hotel at Miami Beach. So listening attended the performance with Joe Lewis, hostess Harold Conrad, stuff like that. Then Conrad, the publicist Howard Conrad, brings the Beatles to do a photo op with Cassius Clay. And it was a perfect idea because it was the marriage between sports and music, signaling that at the highest level, it was all about entertainment and money. The Beatles were compliant, though none had any interest in boxing. Four days before his title fight, Cassius Clay, that was the Cassius X, the open Muslims should stay away from Malcolm during his suspension. Anyway, Cassius began contemplating the repercussions of hosting Malcolm. So Muhammad reminded him that Malcolm had violated his edict and that all disobedient Muslims would suffer punishment. So after speaking with Elijah, Cassius realized that he had endangered his relationship with the Supreme Minister. The failure to heed his warning, he understood, would have consequences. The thing that's interesting about this chapter, so let's read this one. Bill McDonald did not like having Malcolm in Clay's camp any more than Elijah Muhammad did. The same day that Clay spoke to Elijah, McDonald called Clay into his office, threatening to cancel the fight if he didn't denounce the black Muslims. So McDonald complained that his involvement with Malcolm had provoked a boycott by the Jewish community, which was large and powerful in Miami. The Muslims passed comments about Jews exploiting blacks were hurting the gate, he insisted. So others criticized Clay's relationship with the Nation of Islam as well. Marion Jackson, a black writer for the Atlanta Daily World, condemned Cash for opposing integration and promoting the views of the nation. Clay, through his association with Malcolm X, Muhammad, and other black members, have revealed himself as a white-hating racist at the time intergroup progress is being made throughout the South. Yet McDonald failed to convince Clay to rebuke the Muslims. He could not understand why Cash would allow him to cancel the match, risking his only chance at the title. My religion is more important to me than the fight, Clay said. Despite his sincerity, McDonald replied that he had no choice. He was canceling the fight. Publicist Harold Conrad was stunned by the decision. He told McDonald that it was too late. They had already sold thousands of tickets and signed contracts with closed-circuit theaters. The blank, I can't call it off, retorted McDonald. You're a northerner. You don't understand. You don't realize that Miami is the deep south. And it's just as segregated as any town in Mississippi. How can I promote a fight down here with a guy who thinks we're fight devils? Conrad pleaded with him to change his mind. Bill, you're going to go down in history as a guy who did not fire a title shot because of his religion. Blank. Don't start hitting me with the Constitution. It's that Malcolm X. He's responsible for all this trouble. He's probably practically running the kids' fight camp. That don't look good. Conrad had an idea, so if he could convince Malcolm to leave town, would McDonald allow the fight to go on? Yes, I guess so, the promoter answered. Conrad drove out to Clay's house, where he met the fighter, surrounded by somber Muslims. When he walked into the house, the hostility was palpable. Katja was in no mood to talk with him either. Conrad turned toward Malcolm and explained that the fight was off, but you can save it for him. Hal said. Malcolm asked. You have to get out of town now. You're the focal point. You're the guy who press knows. Malcolm looked away from Conrad. He just stood there calculating. He thought about Cassius. Finally answered, all right, I'll go, but I'm coming back for the fight. Conrad offered his hand in a forced smile, but Malcolm wouldn't shake it. He simply touched the white man's wrist with his forefinger and walked away. The fight was back on. Right, chapter 11. It's widely believed that there are more people in the world who understand Einstein's theory than think Cassius Clay has a chance. Jim Murray, quote, Beethoven wrote some of his greatest symphonies when he was deaf. Why wouldn't Cassius Clay fight when he was blind? All right. So in this chapter, we're getting close to the fight with Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali. Obviously, this fight was fought on February 25th, 1964, that's 60 years ago. So, 60th anniversary of this monumental moment for Muhammad Ali. Let's see, let's get into this. It all depended on Clay defeating Liston. Malcolm believed that Allah had delivered Cash to him, and Allah would not have brought the two together in that Detroit luncheon that shone the box of the light of truth, allowed him to ascend to the top of the heavyweight division, only to abandon him now. Surely he could talk to Elijah. He could convince him of the divine importance of the match in Miami. But early on the day of the contest, Malcolm phoned Chicago, whether he talked directly with Elijah or one of the prophet's leading aides, as unclear from the FBI informant's report. But it hardly mattered. Chicago was Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm and Elijah engaged in a conversation, even if it traveled through a third person. Malcolm repeated his absolute belief that Clay would defeat Liston, making the boxer potentially the nation's most important convert and marketable asset. What would the heavyweight champion be worth in terms of world prestige, propaganda, and revenues? What would be the value of its image on the pages of Muhammad Speaks? And how much power would it carry among young black men stifled in the ghettos of America? Could Elijah imagine the waves of emotion that would roll across the auditorium when Malcolm delivered Cassius in the title to the Supreme Minister at the Savior's Day Convention on February 26th? Will mark a new age for the nation of Islam and elevate Elijah to new heights. All it would cost was Malcolm's full and immediate statement. Chicago turned him down flat. Clearly, Elijah, Raymond Sharif, and the other Muslim leaders thought that was Malcolm's daydreaming. They agreed with the experts that Houston would dispatch Clay in a few rounds, ending the meteoric rise of the boisterous contender. Once defeated and possibly even humiliated, he would be just another boxer, battered, scarred, and on the way to oblivion, on the road to oblivion. So Malcolm, the judge, was as bad at evaluating boxers as he was sizing up political infighters. What was more, if by some chance Clay did upset Lister, the nation was prepared to push Malcolm out of the picture and claim Cassius as their own, reaping all the rewards. While Malcolm tried to barter Clay for his reinstatement, Cassius prepared for the final act in his psychological campaign against Lister. Okay, let's skip that. So far, nobody's watching. What I see so far, what I see. I think this chapter is just about getting ready for the fight between Lister and Cassius, the late Muhammad Ali. All right. So when he had completed his mission, Malcolm walked back to his seat near ringside. Stopping briefly to chat with the singer Sam Cooke, who was seated close to Malcolm in row 7. He moved to seat number 7, a lucky seat. 7, along with 12 and 21, were the three numbers that Elijah Muhammad taught were special for the Asiatic black man. The day of the fight was also significant. It was the 25th day of February. 2 plus 5 equals 7. And the following day will be the 34th Savior's Day of Convention. Again, 3 plus 4 equals 7. Believing fully in the power and meaning of numbers, Malcolm must have smiled, at least inwardly. I took this to be Allah's message confirming to me that Cassius was going to win, he later told Alex Haley. So Cassius, wearing a solid thigh length white robe, slipped through the ropes into the ring. The convention center looked as if it were an experiment in economic segregation. The golden circle seats were practically full, celebrities packed next to each other and to other wealthy ticket holders willing to pay top dollar just to sit close to them. So this is talking about the description of the fight. Obviously, Ali won the fight. So here's a description of that. I beat Southern listening. Yeah, so basically in this chapter, he won the heavyweight championship of the world, beat Sonny Liston, so he was able to get it done. And that was that. That's what this chapter was about, mostly about the fight between Sonny Liston and Malcolm X. Excuse me, Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali. So that's the difference maker right there. So, that in mind, is chapter 12, Free to Be Me. The power of the white world is threatened whenever a black man refused to accept the white world's definition, was a James Baldwin. Not everyone wanted him not saying listening before the match. Experts and casual fans alike thought Cassius would go direct from the fight to the hospital, that Sonny would head on to his own victory celebration. But Sonny got the ride to St. Francis and Cassius, suspended in a black tuxedo, disappeared. Yeah, so this is basically after the fight, the aftermath, after he won the championship. So the victory celebration was at the most luxurious hotel in Miami Beach. There was champagne, showgirls, cakes. The celebration would be first class. DJ Sharp was on his own with champagne at a luxury hotel. Controls images of heavyweight championship style. Jack Dempsey, Estelle Taylor, Joe Louis, Marvin Trotter, and from baseball, Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe. So Cassius' victory dinner was a large bowl of ice cream, which he wolfed down in a matter of seconds. That's basically it. Celebrate the fight at the Hampton House. Then this chapter talks about Cassius Clay, Malcolm X, and Jim Brown, the league's most premier running back. They began talking about the future of the black man. Brown was respected by racemen as by professional football players. So the outspoken football star insists that blacks must demand their rights, fight for them, and defend them at all costs. Distrustful of white men, Brown questioned passive resistance, nonviolence. I am skeptical of white men, he would later write in his autobiography, because even the best of them want me to be patient, follow Martin Luther King's advice, so I achieve until God knows when. Listening to Brown, Malcolm could tell that he was sincere in his beliefs. So Malcolm clearly shared his view that famous black athletes had a responsibility to join the freedom movement. For Cassius, then the heavyweight title was a prelude to more important accomplishments, ones that transcended sports, crossed over to politics. Well, Brown, don't you think it's time for this young man to stop spouting off and get serious? Brown agreed the title was not an end in itself. It was a platform for which to advance far more urgent matters. The plan called for Cassius to use the title for his purpose, not to be used, consumed by it. Cassius also understood that his victory over Liston marked the beginning of a new stage in his life. There was nothing left to conquer in the world of boxing. His athletic achievements now matched his worldwide fame. His actions had vindicated his boast, certifying his incessant claims that he was the greatest. Listening to Malcolm's plans, Cassius didn't brag or rhyme. He paid attention, and as far as Malcolm could tell, agreed. The result of the Clay Liston match shocked reporters. Some even mused in their comments about the possibility that the fight might have been fixed. But the history of boxing is full of upsets. Clay's victory over Liston was no more improbable and unexpected than James J. Braddock's 1935 defeat of Max Bauer. What was more startling than the result, however, was the traditional day at the press conference with the champion. Right, so read in this chapter, Ali talks about how he believed in Allah and in peace, and he didn't try to move to white neighborhoods. He didn't want to marry a white woman. He was baptized when he was 12, but I didn't know what I was doing. I'm not a Christian anymore. As for the nation, I go to the black Muslim meeting. And what do I see? I see that there's no smoking, no drinking. And the women wear dresses down to the floor. And I come out on the street and you tell me I shouldn't go there. Well, there must be something there if you don't want me to go there. Stuff like that. And Malcolm said, in a quote, Clay's the finest Negro athlete I ever know. Clay's the finest Negro athlete I ever known. The man who will mean more to his people than any athlete before him. He was more than Jackie Robinson was, because Robinson is the white man's hero. But Cash is the black man's hero. Do you know why? Because the white press want him to lose. They want him to lose because he's a Muslim. You notice nobody cares about the religion of other athletes, but their prejudice against Clay blinded them to his ability. White men were not the only ones blinded by Cassius. Their private moments together between the minister's lectures and lessons. During their conversations, laughter, Malcolm came to believe in their friendship, their brotherhood, their bond. He rarely trusted any man, and few ever visited his home for family dinners the way that Cassius did. Malcolm fell for Clay's boyish wonder, his innocence and charm. Never did he imagine that Clay would hurt him. He trusted his own eyes, seeing what he wanted to see, a magnetic young black man full of conviction and sincerity. But Malcolm failed to apply the key lesson from his relationship with Elijah Muhammad. Things were not always what they seemed. Later that day, Malcolm and Cassius made plans to see each other again soon. They shook hands. Malcolm congratulated him once again more. Then he departed for the airport. As he waited for his flight to New York, Malcolm proudly thought about Clay and how their friendship had evolved. He never felt closer to them than he had during the days between his suspension and Clay's title celebration. They had known each other for only a little more than a year and a half, but in the past month, their relationship had matured swiftly almost as it would crumble. After Malcolm left, Rudy and Sam Saxon returned from Chicago. They arrived with the message for Cassius. During the Savior's Day convention, Saxon told Captain Joseph all about Malcolm's maneuvering in Miami. Joseph shook his head in disgust, convinced that the suspended minister was trying to manipulate Clay. Elijah he told Saxon, had already determined that Malcolm would never return to the nation. Malcolm was an outcast, a marked man with one foot in the grave. Send word to Cassius, Joseph instructed. You better not get too close to Malcolm. All right, so that's it. Chapters 11, 10, 10, 11, and 12. I'm done with chapter 10, 11, 12. Next time I'll be in this book will be next week, as I read chapters 13, 14, and 15 of The Blood Brothers, The Fatal Friendship Between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X book excerpts. So hopefully you enjoyed it tonight. Wasn't that much activity with the live chat. See, only 2 people. That's okay. Hopefully you tune in after this live stream is over. So I'll be back on Thursday for Classic Books with Rashad Mitchell. Get into chapter 1, 2, and 3 of Psalms and be done with it. So that's it, man. That's it for tonight's live stream. Be back on Thursday. Till then, have a good night.